Now then, let's take our Bibles, please, and I want to invite you in the beginning of tonight's Bible study to turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter number 9. 1 Samuel chapter number 9. In studying volatile emotions, I've come to a better understanding of how important it is that we have a biblically healthy balance in every aspect of our lives, but certainly also in our emotions. As we have seen, there is a side of jealousy or envy, one of our topics, that where it is beneficial. It's that wanter that's inside of us, and there's a good application of that, but when we get out of balance, it ends up hurting us and harming our lives deeply. Anger is the same way, and we're going to see the same situation when we come to this matter of what we call worry. Now, worry is not, the word is not found in the Bible, but there's plenty of worrying in the Bible. Plenty of people that worried. And the word that is used in both the Old and the New Testament is similar, as I'll show you here in 1 Samuel chapter number 9 and verse number 5. We're going to begin at verse number 1, which says, "Now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Becherath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward he was higher than any of the people. And the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. And Kish said to Saul his son, Take now one of the servants with thee, and arise, go seek the asses. And he passed through Mount Ephraim, and passed through the land of Shalisha, but they found them not. Then they passed through the land of Shalem, and there they were not. And he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they found them not." Now, this was not a little one-day journey. I mean, he's now gone through 3 different regions identified by their name here and walking. And so this is now a lengthy journey. And Saul's a young man and probably a teenager. And verse 5, "And when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, Come and let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses." And here's the word for worry: take thought for us. Now, it's the same phrase that's used in the New Testament, not exclusively, but take thought for us. It's the idea of worry. He says, we've been gone a long time. Can you imagine if Kish, Saul's dad, was not worried? Well, I would say that would be pretty abnormal and cold-hearted, wouldn't it? Goodness, if one of our children went and it was supposed to be a one-day journey or 2 days, and it got to be 3 and then 4 and 5 and then more and 10 or 15, we'd begin to be, what would we call it? And worry always is associated with something that's with being wrong. But we have a substitute word for worry when it's right. We don't say take thought. We say concerned. Right? They say, this is really a concern. Now, would there be anything wrong with Dad being concerned that his son and the servant weren't home? No. In fact, there would be something wrong if Dad was not concerned that they were home. So, but this is the same word that's used in a negative sense. When David cries out and in fact uses the word sorrow, sometimes the word sorrow or sari in the Bible is this same word, to take thought. It's carrying a thought with you. A lot of things in life, we just think about it for the moment and then we move on. But what the thoughts we carry become our meditation. Now, this is where it becomes extremely important in our lives, because if you and I don't meditate wholesomely, if we meditate on things too much or that are bad, then it's very destructive in our lives. Because when you're meditating on things or worrying about things, that God says it's time to stop thinking about it. You know, you're carrying this thought too far. Now, we find it justified here that the Father would be concerned about His Son. But now, there again, if this sorrow led to despair or led to this Father taking other steps of action, you see, this is an emotion. Worry or taking thought, concern, is an emotion that is very, very volatile. That's what we're dealing with. It's a dangerous emotion. If we're not careful, in fact, the New Testament, remember the man, 1 Corinthians 5, that was in an immoral situation with his mother. Probably a stepmom is the only way I can even conceive of this, but 1 Corinthians 5 and wasn't being dealt with, so God inspired the Apostle Paul to nail it and to deal with it. Evidently they did. Come back in 2 Corinthians though, and now evidently some shunning was taking place. This man had repented, had gotten right with God, ceased the immoral relationship, wanted to come back for restoration, but they shunned him. They said, no. And so God inspired me to write in 2 Corinthians, and he warned him. He said, you need to forgive this man, confirm your love to him. You need to come alongside, the same word used, comfort him, same word that's used of the Holy Spirit in our lives. Only God said this is what the believers needed to do. And He said this is the why, lest he be swallowed up with overmuch sorrow. You see, sorrow is a word that's used in the Bible for this same word, to take thought. It's a word for worry. It's a word for being concerned. But when it comes outside of being a positive benefit, then it becomes destructive in our lives. There are some things that are okay in a certain dosage, but if you overdose on them, then it kills you. And that's the way it is with emotions. If we overdose on a certain emotion, and in this case, if it begins to consume our thought processes and it becomes our meditation, well, then we forfeit all the blessings that are taught to us in the Bible about good meditation. In His law did He meditate day and night. What happens? He shall be like a tree planted by the... But you can't have that benefit if your meditation is filled with worries. So, let me show the example. In fact, you're there in 1 Samuel chapter number 9. Look over at chapter number 10 and verse number 2. 1 Samuel 10:2. And now Samuel's talking to Saul. When thou art departed from me today, then thou shalt find 2 men of Rachel's sepulchre in the border of Benjamin at Zelzah, and they will say unto thee, the asses which thou wentest to seek are found, and lo, thy father hath left the care of the asses, and sorroweth for you, saying, what shall I do for my son? In other words, their dad thinks you're dead. Now, the same word here, sorroweth. You see it there in your Bible? In 1 Samuel 10, verse 2? That's the same word that Saul used. Now it's this, Samuel's using it. Exact same word. If you were reading your Hebrew in the Hebrew language, it's the exact same word that he used back here when he said, my father leave caring for the asses and take thought for us. It's a word of worry. But there it's translated sorrow. Now, let me show this to you in another example. Look in Psalm 38. And we're just going to take it. I'm not going to get in a hurry here. It's like sausage links, this study will be. And when our time's up, I'll cut the sausage link off and stop feeding it to you. It's kosher, so it's all right. And where did I tell you? Where was it? Psalm 38. Psalm 38 is it's a Davidic psalm, and it's a psalm of confession of sin. And boy, we've all felt this. If you haven't, you've been a much better person than me and most of us. And he talks here, verse 1, O Lord, rebuke me not in thy wrath, neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure. For thine arrows stick fast in me, and thy hand presses me sore. There's no soundness in my flesh because of thine anger, neither is any rest in my bones because of my sin. And he goes on and describes this in greater detail. But he come down to verse number 18. He says, or verse 17, I am ready to halt, for I am ready to halt. I'm going to stop. My sorrow is continually before me. For I will declare mine iniquity. I will be sorry for my sin. Now you see this sorrow and sorry? What happened is this. When conviction came from God over David's sin, that was prompted by chastening. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. So it's as if David is describing here a spanking from God. And this wasn't a grandpa spanking. Now grandpa's, I don't know if there's, I don't think I could ever bring myself to, but I saw the other day somebody, I was describing their spanking stick, and it was a grandpa. And he said it's like one of those wooden spoons and with a pillow attached to it. That's how grandpas spank. But that's not how our Heavenly Father spanks. Now here David said, the sorrow is ever before me. What is he saying? He's saying it's become my meditation. I'm so worried. It's the same word as taking thought. He said, I can't get this off my mind, what God's doing and what God may still do to me because of what I've done. Now, wouldn't you agree with me that a good dose of that would be healthy? And pity the person that doesn't have any guilt. Now, this is a characteristic that is oftentimes, and it's somewhat of the norm for unsaved people, but unfortunately even Christian people can so sin against their conscience that they can actually reach a point. In fact, the further you and I go away from God and into that which is disobedient, then the ickier it's going to get. The sin will become, the Bible calls it exceeding sinful. You say, well, isn't sin? Well, yeah, sin's sin, but it can be exceeding sinful. And I know Jesus said, you commit murder, and he says, listen, you're not even supposed to hate anybody. Hatred's like murdering them. Well, if I've got my druthers, I'd rather you hate me. Murder's so final. You know what I mean? So you see, but this is what happens. But what happens then is our conscience that was once sensitive when we were this far away from God, now that we're over here, the things that caused us to be worried about, oh my goodness, God's coming after me and I can't do this. But you know what? Now that doesn't even bother us. Because if we continue in that direction, things get worse. Now David, thank the Lord, David said, I will be sorry for my sins. This is an opportunity. If I didn't have this kind of worry about it, I wouldn't be compelled to obey the Lord. Now we know that if you look at relationships with God or relationships with children and their parents, a very childish relationship, but necessary, and sometimes even when we're biologically older, is fear. Fear of punishment. And when you lost the fear of punishment, and for some who didn't get disciplined when they were children, you struggle with having any fear of God. Because your remembrance and recollection, if it was very inconsistent, now on the other side, if it was wickedly cruel, then again, it just stretches into our adult lives with becoming problematic. Now, I'm glad God can solve every problem, aren't you? And but what I'm simply saying is that there's a place for worry. And that's actually the number one principle. I'm going to give you some principles tonight and next week and maybe a little further. And this is principle number one. Worry has a beneficial place in our lives. There is a level of worry that we would call concern. A missing son is justified concern. The dad ought to be worried. Now, if he's not careful, though, it becomes his meditation, and he's taking this thought, and that's all he can think about is his son. Well, all the other responsibilities of life, and not the least of which is his relationship with God, that can all go by the wayside, and we can find ourselves making these dastardly poor decisions. Why? Because our mind is consumed. That's why worry, it can be beneficial, but it's got a shelf life. And very quickly it can rot and become damaging to us. But we certainly ought to be worried about the consequences of our sin. And we ought to be worried about people and that are missing and possibly hurting. This same idea is used, look with me at Jeremiah number 3, the third example of this in the Old Testament, Jeremiah 17. Now, many of you remember that Jeremiah was a prophet of God that was called to minister in Jerusalem, hence the Lamentations of Jeremiah, during the captivity when the children of Israel, having disregarded God's Sabbaths for many, many years, eventually God sent them away for 70 years into captivity. That's where Daniel and his life then was lived, and what a powerful influence he was for God in those great empires. And his companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that we know, and many others. Well, there were others that were left in this devastated city. And the Babylonians were notoriously cruel, wicked, vile, immoral people, and their soldiers at war had just destroyed Jerusalem as well as much of Israel. So here's Jeremiah ministering to these people in the midst of all of this. And so his messages are filled with encouragement and hope and yet exhortation. And it's not a surprise then that he talks a lot about how to get in a position where God will stop spanking you. Now, you ever thought about the meting out of punishment? What if someone's getting a spanking and they just laugh? That doesn't hurt a bit. Oh, I can tell you what's going to happen if I'm at the end of the stick. Huh? Oh yeah, it's going to get fiercer. Because it's not punishment, it's not chastening, it's not going to be beneficial if it doesn't hurt. Now, in Jeremiah here then, in chapter number 17, we're going to just jump right into verses 7 and 8. He provides a contrast earlier on. He talks about how you got into this mess, but here's how to get out. Verse 7, blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful. That's the same word that we've seen already, translated sorry, or take thought. It's a word of worry. It's a word of concern. And he says, you won't have to be careful. Now, what is careful? Take it apart. Care, full of care. Now, you'd have to say, it's a bad thing to be empty of care. What if you said of somebody they don't have any care? What do you say about them? You know, they're uncaring. They have no care. Or a person that doesn't have a right dose of concern, you'd say they're careless. They have less care than what they need. You see the balance in all of this that we're talking about? We're going to experience this emotion through the experiences of life, and maybe people that are a part of our lives and our relationship with them, as it was Saul and his dad. His dad was worried about his son. It might be very personal, like David in his own sin, and he's worried about what is God doing, and how long before this is going to stop. And now then, in Jeremiah, God inspires Jeremiah to say, tell them that if they'll trust in me, and they'll turn to me, and they'll repent of their sin, and then they don't have to worry, because I'll stop. That doesn't mean they won't have problems, but you know, life is filled with problems. And our days bring plenty of problems from the devil, from the world in which we live, and from internally our own flesh. Why add to our problems? Why add to our troubles, chastening from our Father in heaven? Life is problematic enough. So he says, do you want out of this? So, you know, it doesn't mean you're not going to have any troubles in life, but he's saying, you want me to stop spanking you? Then put your trust in me and yield to me and get this thing right. And you won't have to live a careful life. You won't have to be filled with cares. And how many people are prescribed and taking medicine every day to try to take care of their cares? Do you know the root of that? That's Satan is behind the root of that. He wants you to look for a substitute for your cares, your worries, other than him doing right. See? We say, man, and now what would you call a person that just stood out in the rain when an umbrella was right there? You'd say, this person's really stupid. But you know what? When you and I, we just say, I don't care. That's a bad place to be. But contrary-wise, when we're right with God, we can say, you know, I'm not worried about these things. You know, God, in our relationship with Him, He wants that to be the source of taking care of our worries. He doesn't want us seeking it in another relationship. We ought to be more independent of one another. We ought to get over our dependence. We're so strongly dependent on, if they don't look at me right, or if they don't say the right all the time. Come on, get over it. Get over yourself. You know, God, ultimately we talk about, trust in relationships. Can I tell you a little secret? It's on your money. It says, in God we trust. Can I tell you what will be true? A truism? Your people will disappoint you. I don't care how sincere they are and how good they are. That'll just be a part of the level of it. But if our trust and our confidence and our cares, and we're looking for somebody, it's not going to be anybody but Jesus. And this is the dilemma. Because today, people have all kinds of, they've got entertainment. We can just entertain ourselves out of our problems. We know it's temporary. We can eat ourselves out of our problems. We can dope ourselves away from our problems. But God says, no, maybe that pressure is on you because I'm wanting you to deal with something in your life. And when you deal with that in your life, then you don't have to be filled with care about that anymore. But if you don't deal with it, if you just keep passing it off and just going on and pretending they're looking for another source to just fix your feelings for a little while, you're going to find yourself in deeper trouble. So that's this principle. Worry does have a beneficial place in our lives. You see, look at Matthew chapter number 6 for a moment. When the Bible talks about taking thought, when you come into the New Testament then, now we have Jesus preaching the Sermon on the Mount, not to the multitude, they happen to listen in, but to His disciples. And he's going to talk with them about about worry. And he uses the same phrase we saw in the Old Testament, take thought. And here he puts it with the negative and says it, take no thought. And what he's saying is, do not worry. Look at Matthew chapter number 6, 25 through 34. And this is where we'll be next week. But beginning in verse 25, and if you're a student of this issue and would like to maybe help remove some of those ulcers and other medical things that are a result of worry, maybe you'd do well, no, you would do well, studying verses 25 through 34 in great detail. And even before we get at it next week, when he says, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body what you shall put on. Is not the life more than meat and the body than raiment? Take no thought. In verses 25 through 34, that little phrase is used 6 times. And it means don't worry. Don't carry a thought, don't think about something longer than is essential or necessary or beneficial. See, the little phrase, take thought, it deals with time, because you're taking something with you. So it's time and it's thinking. So don't think about things longer than they're necessary. And he illustrates it in this way. He says, he actually applies it in 3 ways. The first being, he says, what you shall eat. Now, this is where we'll stop today, but you have to think about what you're going to eat. It's a nice thing, to think about eating. And if you don't think about it, then obviously, eventually you shrivel up and die. But menus are a good place to think about, well, what am I going to eat? And boy, there's a little Italian restaurant, just not very big, just right up here out in Perryville North, and on the left-hand side, and it's called Marciano's. And oh yeah, somebody else has been there. Oh my gracious! I think their breadsticks are the equivalent of manna in the wilderness, and God must make it and send it there. Stop by and get an order of their breadsticks to go. No, you better get 2 and call me. I mean, I can't. There's some things on here. A lot of things I can't eat. Or well, I can eat it, but I'll have to exercise it off, and I hate those exercise machines. And that's if there was a purgatory, it would be the health club. That's as far as I'm concerned. That's purgatory or the other place, But anyway. Now, but could you imagine how senseless it would be if you just kept this on your mind? Hey, what are you thinking about, preacher? Oh, I'm thinking about clams donato on the half shell, sauteed in a spicy garlic oregano broth, served with French bread, $7.99. Yeah. So then you talk to me a few minutes later. Hey, can I talk to you about something? Yeah. Hey, have you tried their fried ravioli over at Marciano's? It wouldn't take you very long. You think, what's going on with the pastor? Oh, he's taking a thought. What's he going to eat? He's taking it with him. Now, see, that's not appropriate. If you're going to eat in a restaurant, you go and sit down, and they come up to you. And if they're busy, they're right up there, and they got a little thing out there, and he's okay. What would you like? I have a little time here, trying to think through what I want. He comes back 5 minutes. No, you're not going to sit there for an hour. You're not going to stand in McDonald's or down at Culver's. And in fact, you can really tell a person that's indecisive. Just take them to a restaurant and ask them to pick out something to eat. And, I'm thinking, hey, this is lunch. It's going to be dinner if you don't get going. And it's very frustrating. Find something and pick it out. and then let's go on. There are more important things to think about than food. Now, by the way, it is really worrisome because, food, some food is comforting, comfort food. Like those, how much are they? I'm just in case somebody here wants to pick me up some. Oh, they've got calzones that are to die for, too. Now, if I just carry this, what's on the preacher's mind? Well, what's he going to eat? It's just always there. Well, now, that's bad. Because the more I look at this, the more I salivate. Oh, I am. I'm like Pavlov's dogs right now. Didn't you study that in Psych 101? This stupid thing, and these dogs, they ring a bell and feed them, and then they stop feeding them, and the dogs just drool, and they, like they're getting food. Anyway, I don't know what that was supposed to help you with your marriage or child rearing or something, but I don't know. So we didn't ring the bell, though, when we ate, but anyway. But the point being, it's meant to be have a level of humor when Jesus said it. Take no thought what you're going to eat. He wasn't saying, oh, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. No, he's saying you figure out what's on the menu. Get a menu. Ladies or whoever does the shopping. You figure out here's what we're going to have and here's where to buy. And, it's not saying don't plan your meals, but don't build your life around thinking about food. I mean, don't take the thought with you. Sit down, decide, eat, and forget it. And your tummy will tell you when it's time to eat again. And sweetheart, mine is screaming to me. I feel like a lion inside there. I hope you can't hear it from the microphone from here to here. I had a light lunch, and that's all I had for about 24 hours here. So when I get done with work tonight, honey, I'm going to have something to eat when I get home. And you're going to drive separately, so if you want to go buy Amacianos. All right. You get the idea, though. You just don't take those thoughts with you. Can I ask you, what's your meditation? Many people, and it may not be food, but it's something that's really, our lives are more than food. More than satisfying of taste buds, feeding our body and nourishing it. It's a lot more than that. But here's the pity of it. If this is what I think about, if I take that thought with me, I can't think about the Lord. And the more I take this thought with me, the more salivating I do, and the more I want it. And I like thinking about it. And that's the way it is. And it can be your troubles, it can be your fears, and you find yourself, man, I'm just so filled with worry. It's all I can think about. What? And these things, when we study it, you'll see it's three-directional. This is what makes it even more incredibly difficult, because you can find yourself worried about things in the past that you can't do anything about. So why take the thought? Well, because I can't get it. Oh, I'm going to teach you. But you got to stop taking those thoughts with you. Okay, it's done. You're not going to turn back the calendar. Somewhere you have to let it go. But it can also affect us in our present. And everybody here, you've got something that you could carry that thought with you further than it's important. And it's not beneficial anymore. And you've talked through it, and you've thought through it a zillion times. Haven't you figured it out yet? It's time to stop. And then the future. How many times have we worried about something happening and it never even happened? But boy, we had that was our menu, and that's what we were going to be thinking about. And all the while, there were all these other wonderful meditations that we could have been thinking about, but we missed out on them because we were stuck on something we were worried about. Now, do you know the answer to because I just don't want to leave you hanging. The Lord may come back again. I may croak. That reminds me of the little boy that said, "Grandpa, would you make it sound like a frog?" And Grandpa said, "Why are you asking me that, son?" He said, "Because I heard Daddy tell Mommy that when you croak, we're going to go to Disneyland." So anyway. But the real, and I'm going to just tell you, here's the secret, just in case I croak, all right? And don't get to hear next week, is this. It's trusting the Lord. It just comes back to that. I felt bad whenever my kids, if I found out they were worried about something that was my responsibility. I hope they never had to wonder, does Dad love Mom? Does Mom love Dad? They're going to take care of us? Will there be food on the table? We're going to have everything okay? And I'd feel upset if my kids were wringing their hands wondering, boy, I wonder if my dad's going to take care of us. Okay. Can I tell you? Then don't wring your hands. Dad's going to take care of us. Let's just please Him. You did all right as long as you want to please your Father, as long as that's the goal. And our Heavenly Father, He's going to take care of us. Well, if you have enjoyed these last 35 minutes as much as I have, studying this and having the privilege of delivering it, then you've had a good dinner here, spiritually speaking. See, I got this on my mind. Now I'm going to talk that. Food speak. All right. We're all done.